Good afternoon, everyone. I extend to you a very warm welcome to today's session. I sincerely hope that all of you are in the best of your health. I am Khwahish from Economic Times and your host for today's session. Today's discussion will be on the topic 5 signs you need to automate your IT services, organized by Symphony Summit AI and ETCIO. Before we get started, I would like to take a couple of minutes to set the context and then bring in our speakers to get the discussion rolling. With digital transformation and a hybrid work model, it has become crucial for the service desk to leverage automation and provide employees with efficient IT support and experience. However, in the current scenario, agents are feeling burnt out and users face a frictionful digital experience and IT costs continue to rise. This makes it mandatory for IT professionals to effect positive digital experience improvement using automation. In today's session, we are going to learn about 5 signs you need to automate your IT services and see how Summit AI will help you to improve operational efficiencies and better use of experience using automation. And to enlighten us further on the topic, we have with us today Mr. Rishi Sundaraman, Associate Director, Pre-Sales, Symphony Summit AI, and Mr. Raj Shekharan, Director, Marketing and Communication, Symphony Summit AI. But before we get started, I request our audience to please share their questions in the Q&A tab. Towards the end, our esteemed speakers will answer those questions as deemed suitable. With that, I kindly request Mr. Raj Shekharan to kindly take over and lead the discussion forward. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking time to join this webinar, and we will make sure that you have next 1 hour, which is very productively spent with some meaningful conversations, and we definitely want to make this more interactive. Before I really start the session, I just want to probably narrate a recent incident which we heard from that happened in one of our partners organization. And this is about recently when they were onboarding the employees. So we have a well-defined process and SLAs for onboarding the employees. And they automated many of the parts. And what happened was that, so this incident was that, so they actually recently onboarded an employee who happens to work in their development space where they had to do a lot of UI, UX and everything. So he is a graphic designer. He has to have some high-end system and then some of the tools like Adobe tools that he requires him to sort of really do the designs and developments and the others. And what happened was that the process, as per the process, they've onboarded the employees and then they've realized that they've met and delivered their SLA in terms of issuing the laptop well ahead of the time and making sure that everything is delivered. But when the employee opened it up, he realized that the configuration that is required for him to really do the work, it doesn't really meet that. So he wanted a higher configuration, and the many of the applications which have to be there in the laptop for him to really start delivering the productivity from the day one. So those applications were missing. So then IT had to really go back, rework. It took about a couple of days for them to really fix it. So the point which I want to really talk about is that today everybody most of the organizations have a well-defined SLA and others, but how many of you started actually looking at this from an experience-led agreement? Okay, moving away from SLA to XLA. Gartner defines XLA as experience level agreements aimed to drive better employee experience by leveraging elements of digital experience monitoring, sentiment analysis, traditional service level metrics, monitor them, all that to really ensure that they create a greater employee engagement and deliver a greater productivity. So the leading organizations have actually started moving away from SLA and started actually looking at things more from an experience level agreements or what is called as an XLA. This one slide from Gardner sort of really defines that, okay, how it really SLA works. So in the traditional world, the SLA-driven experience, as you see here, is the white line, which will have ups and downs just going, okay? Because the SLAs are designed in such a way that, okay, it is essentially break-fix model, okay? It's sort of, if something has happened, just fix that and go. But XLA looks at things from a very holistic point, from an experience point, and from an experience point, and then sort of really make sure that, okay, the employee, everything is designed around the employee experience of it. So what it really does is that it helps provide that, okay, a consistent experience for the employees, and that also that improved experience which the organization requires. This is actually a beautiful slide from Dr. I thought that, okay, we'll use that for the discussion. Moving on. So this is some of the prediction in terms of how organizations have really started embracing automation and in their work. By 2023, 40% of the product and platform teams will start leveraging AIOps or any of the automated risk analysis in the DevOps pipelines and reducing unplanned downtime at least by 20%. By 2024, organizations with IT teams that understands the needs of the customers and specifically the employees will outperform their competition, and specifically in the experience metrics by 20%. And it just goes on to really talk about that. By 2025, 50% of the enterprises will have device artificial intelligence driven orchestration platforms to operationalize AI, up from currently what is being used at about like 10% and more. So it is important that, okay, organization has to really start moving to service-driven automation. And service-driven automation makes it easy for employees and customers to resolve issues faster and get what they need when they need. If you really look at an organization, so why you need a service automation? So I'm sure that, okay, most of you know about it, but we have to sort of really break this from, we have to just classify and put this under two buckets. One is that, okay, to help deliver better employee experience or customer experience and improve operational efficiencies. The things that would really come under the customer experience will be that service automation can help deliver 24/7 service availability, self-service, accelerated productivity. If you look at the operational efficiencies, it helps drive the agent productivity. So you have like a large number of analysts and the agents who work behind the service desk to really make sure that, okay, so they deliver greater experience and they work towards to solve the customer or the employee problems. It's important that, okay, you empower them with the tools and technologies that help them improve the agent productivity and automate many of the manual and the repetitive tasks which the agents will be sitting and doing behind the service desk. Reduce errors. Auto resolutions using virtual agents, faster resolutions, cost savings. So these are the, I would say that, very obvious needs for your organizations to sort of really move to the service automation. And the next questions, which many of us would be really thinking about, that what should I start really automating first? One is that, okay, it is about repeatable low-value tasks, low-skill processes, tasks that involve significant human dependencies. Wherever you have a significant human involvement, it's prone to have that, okay, many errors. So wherever you see that, okay, there is a significant human dependencies, and those are the parts which you need to just start taking, automating it. Activities, processes that have a high cost of errors, which is again related to the human dependencies. And complexities or multiple steps involved in the process. So these are the things which you can actually start thinking it and straight away automating it. So the 5 signs that you need to automate for your IT services, I would really start with by looking at that. Okay, look at the unstructured, manual, and time-consuming processes. growing IT spends, your organizations continue to sort of really invest on increase the IT spends to sort of really manage the team and then just making sure that okay, running the lights on activities. It is important for us to really go back and look at that, the activities and the processes that you can just take and automate it. And if your organization is facing non-compliance issues, that's another area which you could probably start automating it. And the declining employee satisfaction, so which is again related to the XLA, which I just said in the beginning. And if you're facing that, okay, that's another area which you should actually start doing it. Before I actually move on to the next slide, so we're going to really discuss this in detail, where my colleague Rishi Sundaraman will sort of really show very tangible experiences using with the real world use cases which we have. So Rishi will be talking about it. Before I really move on to the other slides, I'm not sure that okay, how many of you have heard about Symphony Summit AI. Let me spend about like next couple of minutes to sort of really take you through Symphony Summit AI. We are largely part of Symphony AI. So we are a group company of Symphony AI. Symphony AI focuses on developing solutions, leveraging AI for the various enterprises and help solving the problems various enterprises faces. If you really look at in the consumer space, there are various companies who are actually solving the problems leveraging AI for the consumer market. But in the B2B or in the enterprise spaces, there are actually limited companies. So the Symphony AI focuses on solving problems leveraging AI in the enterprise space. We have a large customer base, 1,400 plus customers in 100 plus countries. We won numerous innovation awards, 60 patents, and 2,000 employees, and company was founded in 2017. And these are some of the customers of Symphony AI. You'll find right from Nestle to Unilever to P&G to 3M, Pepsi, NBC, Paramount, Coke, all of them are actually the customers of Symphony AI. These are some of the recognitions in the awards the Symphony AI won. Now moving on to specifically talking about Symphony Summit AI. A leading analyst has positioned Symphony Summit AI as a disruptor and fast emerging player in the IT management space. We have customers across the globe, right from North America to Japan, Australia, UK, South America, and the entire Southeast Asia and the Middle East countries. This is just one overview slide about Symphony Summit AI. We are leading AI-powered IT and enterprise service management suite. We've been winning Gartner Peer Insights customer recognition for the last 4 years in a row. We've been featured in various reports of IDC and Forrester. We've been the preferred choice of the CIOs in the country, and we have been winning this recognition of CIO choice for the last 5 years in a row. We work with about 300 plus customers, and some of the leading customers are we work right from KPMG to Deloitte, EY, Coke, Diversity, Marico, SBI, and all of these are actually the BAL, Bangalore International Airport. These are actually some of our reference customers. As an IT buyer, when you invest in the solutions, what you would really look at is that you evaluate a solution based on various parameters. And something like willingness to recommend, product capabilities, evaluation and contracting, integration and deployment. If you really look at all the key parameters as an IT decision maker, which you look from a vendor, we've been rated far higher compared to the rest of the players in the market, and this is validated as per Gartner and Gartner Peer Insights. This data is available on public domain. You can go and check yourself on Gartner Peer Insights, and we've been winning this recognition for the last 4 years in a row. And if you also look at that in the various phases, if you really look at the large enterprise space, again, Summit AI has been positioned in the topmost customer's choice quadrant. You can see that here. And in the mid-size enterprise spaces, that's again the Roki Symphony SUMMITAI has been placed in the topmost right-hand corner. And we being the leader in the services industry and of course in the Asia Pacific region. And this is based on the Gartner report, which was published in March 2022. And many of the verticals we operate, we have predominant leadership into it. So right from telecommunication to financial services, if you look at it, SUMMITAI works with about like 40 plus BFSI companies in the country. And when it comes to the automobile, if you just name all the leading players, right from Maruti Suzuki to Toyota to Honda, Bajaj, all of these are actually the customers of Summit. And when it comes to the healthcare and manufacturing space, again, most of the leading companies are the customers of Summit AI. This is one slide which sort of really explains our entire suite. We are into IT service management, enterprise service management, asset management, service automation, and AI-driven digital agent. We call it as Cindy. Our offering goes beyond IT. Of course, the IT is something that the CIOs leverage Summit AI for managing their IT service management and asset management. But our offering actually goes beyond IT for functions like HR, facilities, finance, marketing, legal. And for each function, okay, they can interact with our solution using various systems of engagement. What you see from here, you can interact with our solution either using web chat, Microsoft Teams, Slack, Skype, Jabber, mobile app, email, web portal, web services. But what differentiates Symphony Summit AI from the rest of the players are essentially what we call it as systems of intelligence layer, which is the mid layer, which leverages AI and automation, which can identify the intent identification, intent classification, workload management, self-service and automation, and help deliver far better insights, help automate many of the manual tasks, and help improve the productivity and the experience of the organizations. So with that, let me invite my colleague Rishi to take you through real-world examples and the use cases of service automation. With that, Rishi, over to you.
Thanks, Raj. That was a great insights in terms of a lot of analyst data that you have presented about this topic that we are going to discuss, which is primarily the orchestration. Thanks for that. And so now we understood what primarily drives automation or orchestration scenarios in any enterprise-wide organization. So let us also try to understand what is Summit service automation offering is, and how do we primarily handle orchestration or automation scenarios, and then go ahead in terms of providing some live use cases through a demo environment which we have set up specifically for this session, right? So here, when we talk about service automation, there are multiple types of automation, which is primarily the zero-touch automation, where with zero intervention of any human technician to be involved in the resolution of a particular service request process that is there. Typical examples would be primarily a software installation that comes in, or probably a shared folder access, or probably requesting an application access right from an end user, right? So these can be completely zero automated. Why? Because it's simply because, as Raj had explained, right, these are monotonous, repetitive tasks. Though it requires certain level of access to deliver this, but does not require skill, right, to do it, because it's primarily a kind of data entry work. That's wherein our zero-touch automation really helps in many large organizations to divert that particular specific skill set or level 3 skill set to more intellectual work rather than a monotonous and repetitive tasks. And second is primarily manual or assisted based on event triggers that can come from your monitoring tools or from application logs that you might get. Based on those event-driven remediation which can be manual as well as assisted execution. Typical example is primarily, for example, certain application I'm not able to access, right, which is a .NET application. It might require an ASP.NET service to be started and stopped, right, at my services end, right? So this primarily would require, or probably a specific level of access to be handle these kind of service start and stop, because it's more of an administrative privilege, right? So in those cases, we can primarily provide a front-end script for the technicians to really pick up these scripts and run it without any authentication required, which are pre-built authentication based on your authentication sets, and that will help deliver that particular remediation. It can also be primarily in scenarios where there is a hard disk utilization from a critical server that has happened. The event monitoring tool will trigger that update to Summit, and based on which an event or incident is created, and that incident is created and an automation scenario is identified by the system, and then you trigger a specific set of tasks to ensure that that event is remediated, right? And of course, primarily we have automated service request fulfillment, which we spoke about, which is a combination of certain hybrid automation where certain set of actions can be automated and rest can be human intervened, where there is an intellectual requirement to really deliver that particular service closure, right? Now, once we have understood this, let us also understand how does primarily the Summit features of Summit service automation. One is the automation framework is an open framework. What we mean by open framework is that it supports wide variety of scripting languages, right? The entire framework is on primarily, though the base platform is on .NET framework, right? With this correlates with our ITSM platform, or it can also run as an independent automation tool, again with your any ITSM product that you might have. And plus, it also supports scripting languages, PowerShell, VBScript, Python, Perl, Bash, or even to an extent of a set of batch file which contains a series of CLI commands that you might want to execute. So it is primarily very flexible platform to write your script based on the skill sets that you possess within the organization. And of course, you can also use any of the standard languages like PowerShell, VBScript, which we spoke about. And the execution of workflow, right, is seamless with based on the event, which is primarily an incident or a service request, or probably a subtask that has been part of your ITSM platform that executes, right? So the execution can also be workflow based, or it can be manually called upon depending on what type of scenario you are trying to address, right? So it also supports seamless integration with any of, whether it is your applications are in cloud set or it is an on-premise, it doesn't matter. As long as we are able to meet the prerequisite in terms of connectivity, secure connectivity between our Summit automation platform with your applications, which is either in cloud or premise. And we also support primarily any protocol that is supported for the ports, open respective ports. Predominantly, we use HTTPS, and end-to-end workflow configuration in terms of development of any orchestration scenario is completely possible, right? Moving on to next, which is primarily how primarily is the Summit service automation architecture. We all know any enterprise that we have is primarily process and infrastructure layer, and then we have the various sources which are primarily the trigger point for any kind of service request or an incident. One is primarily being the monitoring systems, which regularly keeps on generating events from your data center, right? We have wide variety of use cases that we have addressed. The simplest being VM provisioning that we can showcase it to you. And then we have user driven. The users can raise several types of request, right? Which means that I want a shared folder access, I want an application access, I want to install a software in my machine, right? All those things, or it can be from any of the third-party application, right? Like which includes, apart from the monitoring, you have security events that triggers incidents, right? If SAEMs triggers that there is a specific need that a particular offense has happened in a particular firewall, for which you need to immediately arrest that port or probably start scanning that particular port, right? So that's primarily a third-party application. These are the various sources that Summit can enter. Of course, we have a very robust integration hub where we can integrate with any of the application. It can be an ITSM application, security, monitoring, APM applications, which can be the source for triggering any event into the Summit system for orchestration purpose. Then we have our SUMMITAI. Of course, Raj had explained quite detailedly what are the modules that we have, where we have the Summit application server that is sitting in along with orchestration engine, and based on which primarily you have all your orchestration scenarios executed from this orchestration layer. And that one of the key components that we speak about is always the SUMMIT proxy. This is not your internet proxy, but an intermediate mid server which primarily handles the various type of automation scenarios which are triggered either from an incident or a service request or a work order, based on which this proxy will be the prime source of interface to your infrastructure layer, which is either in cloud or on-premise. When I talk about infrastructure, it includes application also, because there can be a lot of scenarios where you have to automate certain application tasks that are there. So the infrastructure can either be in cloud or in on-premise, right? So both scenarios, the architecture completely supports. And this orchestration configuration is completely GUI driven. So you don't have to have any specific skill sets to deliver this. Of course, the scripting and knowledge is one of the key aspects that are there. So to write various scripts that you require to automate, right? So moving on to this, we are going to quickly showcase a simple sample use case that we are going to speak about, where we'll see how service request is done by a particular user, a project user, or probably a software development user who needs certain testing to be done, for which he requires a virtual machine that is required with certain configuration. Let us look at, and primarily the personas that are involved in this entire workflow is primarily the requester, which is primarily an end user, as I told you, a project team member. Then primarily the service owner, who is primarily designs when such requests are there. If it requires any approval workflows, that is also taken care. And then we have a virtual agent, which is primarily the orchestration bot, which goes and delivers and fulfills this particular request from the user. So with that, I'm switching my screen to a demo environment, right, where we primarily have a user logging into a system using a specific login credentials that has been provisioned from the system, where we talk about I log into the system to raise my request. For example, in this case, Frederick Norton is requiring an shared folder access, right, in the system, right? So you need to log into the ITSM, which is of the service management tool, which we have as a Summit here, which primarily would be the key service request module through which he will make a request. So I'm going to submit a request as an end user, right, where I'm going to raise a request that I am requiring for a shared folder access in a particular FTP server that is there, and based on which I'm going to make a request, right? So before that, I just want to showcase how does the automation is. For example, this is one of the shared folder FTP file server that we have. In one of the folders, right, I'm going to show that the respective user, right? We are talking about Frederick Norton, who's going to make that request. That user is primarily not here as part of the sharing folder that has been enabled, right? So here you don't see Frederick Norton here. We are going to exactly see that how Summit's orchestration layer is primarily going to deliver this functionality without even any human intervention into the entire process, right? So I'm going to say that for a shared folder access, and here's the request that is in front of me. I select this request to log my requirements, which is the folder exactly I'm going to do. I'm going to say that I'm going to looking for project management, which is where I showcased you. Right. So I want a specific folder access, which is primarily the in-progress access, and then I'm looking for a read. And generally, I go and save you my requirements. I need to download reports project status. Some business justification that the user is supposed to give, based on which I log the service request, for which a reference ID is generated. right? So this is wholly a seamless experience from an end user standpoint, where he is making a request, which Raj talked about, experience level agreement, right? So that is something we have a SR that has been reference number that has been generated, which is reflected. And then I can go into my service request view, where I can see this service request being handed over to a particular analyst, right? As we can see here, we can add and search. Right, 8937 was the ID that I'm looking for. Here it is. So I pick up this. This is primarily not an end user screen. This is not an access generally given to end user. This is primarily a technician. What all, how the ticket progresses over this is what, right? Now the request is raised. It is a new status, and there would be a set of orchestration functions that primarily goes into this particular request. So I'm going to primarily take some time while we look at the progress of this request from the end user standpoint. So where I'll be able to see my service requests. So what I'm trying to do is I'm looking for the status of my service request, and I'm going to search for that particular request. Right. So now the status has been approved. Right, we see the entire service request details coming up here. So I'm just going to quickly check a particular step in the technical process. Just give me a moment. Sorry for this particular pause. Yes. So as we move on to this particular service request, which is going to be fulfilled, we will also look at another request, a user request on VM provisioning, right? So I go primarily here on the VM provisioning. So I'm going to look for a VMware provisioned virtual server. So I'm going to select, provide the basic fulfillment information about what I'm looking in this virtual machine in terms of which location for which I'm requesting, what is the OS type, what is the host name. Here I'm going to say that ETCIO-webinar, right? I need CPU, right? This is what I would read 10 GB, right? For application testing and staging purpose, right? So this is another service request as part of my business operations. I am making a request and submitting this. As soon as I raise the request, I'll be able to see this under my service request list. So this is primarily the service request. Let us look for an update quickly to see whether the progress. I'm going to check whether the user has been added to this. So the work is in progress for the particular service request. Let us wait for the system to complete that particular workflow, and we will showcase it. Meanwhile, as an end user, let me go and quickly check. So as you can see, the ticket is in progress, the ticket that we raised for VM provisioning, right, where the ticket is moving to in progress, where the ticket has been assigned, and it is in the process of getting provisioned. So once the ticket moves to a resolved status, we primarily will have the VM provision, and we will be able to see that in the VMware console of what is the VM that has been provisioned based on the request, right? So this contains all the details about the request that we have. So the ticket is still in progress. Let us see what are the steps involved that so this is the ticket whereby from a technician standpoint, he will be able to see the progress of this ticket, what and all has been executed. As you can see, the VM provisioning request overall is in progress. The status has been updated, which is a success status of that particular ESR. And then we talk about primarily what is primarily happening is where the system is has called the API of the VMware vCentral process, and based on which you have the step-by-step process which are involved in delivering the VM provisioning status, right? So meanwhile, let me also quickly showcase you how this orchestration configuration looks from a how do you set up the various workflows for executing certain use cases, right? The use cases can be several use cases. One is primarily we have a library of use cases, which includes just sharing my presentation, where we talk about Microsoft Active Directory related functions, where you want to include or remove users from a security group, right? Change owner of the security group, right? And creating any user, right? Checking or doing the basic hygiene checks, whether if the user exists or not. And based on that, you can define your actions to add, remove, or whatever it is. And then anything related to provisioning of mailbox, whether it is Microsoft Exchange or O365 or any other mailing solution, in terms of user creation, adding the user to a distribution list. So we have quite a lot of use cases, right? One of the key aspects is primarily Windows operating systems related to shared folder access, probably removing server from a domain, clearing event logs, right? So wide varieties of more than 300 plus, and these use cases are not limited to these use cases that libraries that you have. You can also create your custom use cases based on the workflow that you want to design in the orchestration engine, right? So this is primarily the instance where we set up. Then we define the scripting process where you can have libraries of scripts, which I spoke about. For example, when you want to do a AD user creation, right? I will have a set of scripts which are primarily a set of scripts which are written in PowerShell, and based on which I can have my scripts that are written. These are some of the sample scripts that we have that can be written in PowerShell scripts. As you can see, the libraries include Perl, Python, Shell script, VB script, right? You can define and choose what is your, or it can be a simple set of DOS commands that you want to execute in an end user machine. For example, copy file commands, right? Or probably host name commands that you want to primarily execute host related activities, you can do. So once you define these set of user defined scripts, you can always go to the workflow orchestration workflows. When does it start or when does it end is something you will be able to see. And this is a dashboard that we provide in terms of the number of scripts that are there and how many have been success and how many have been taken. When it comes to access right management, you have a series of scripts that you see what are the steps involved. So these are simple workflow processes that you will be able to bring in, or related to file management, where we talk about shared folder access and other things which are there. Right. So let me quickly move on to our demo environment and see if the service request is completed. So let me quickly do a refresh on this particular screen. Let us look at what has happened. So this is primarily in progress. So once these steps primarily completes, you will have the entire VR provisioning can happen. Right in between, I have do see some questions popping up. Let me see that if I'm able to answer that. So one of the questions that has primarily come in is that how different is it from Subbies now? One is primarily that ours is a completely open source platform where you can call and configure any type of open source scripts that are primarily which you are listed, and the entire workflow is completely configurable and seamlessly integrated with any platform or applications that you have. I'm just doing a quick check with my internal team also why we are not able to complete this particular process. Just bear with me. Right. So this primarily is a service request for the VM provisioning, where it has gone through the progress. So here I'm going to see this various dashboards that are available. Right. Where you can see that orchestration scripts based on the ticket number that is there, we have executed, and primarily you see the various steps and their success process, whereby both the service requests are fulfilled. Right. We can also see the status of the tickets that are getting updated here. Let me go to the vCenter vSphere console. And right. So this is primarily the VM that we created, right? We requested with the host name ETCIO webinar. So this is where the VM has been provisioned with the requested information about the data size and other things.
Thank you, speakers, for such an insightful session. We gathered quite some interesting learnings from the presentation. So before we move on to our Q&A tab, I request our audience to please share their answers in the upcoming poll. With that, I also request our team to please release the first poll. So the poll question is, are you looking for any of the following service automation solutions in the next 6 to 12 months? And your options are looking to orchestrate, automate mundane tasks through service automation for a better user experience. Are you looking to replace the current automation tool in your environment due to complexity, cost, or support? Are you especially looking to automate employee onboarding, VM resource provisioning, cloud and on-prem, etc.? Do you also want to remediate events from the multiple monitoring tool sources? All of the above, and last, none of the above. I request audience to quickly share their answer. With that, we will now quickly move on to our Q&A session. So the first question that we have from our audience is, service automation can be extended to any kind of infrastructure and ITSM-based orchestration. Mr. Rishi, if you could answer this question.
Yes, it can integrate with any platform. It's an independent platform. Predominantly, you can have a REST API-based integration with our orchestration layer, using which you will be able to integrate Summit's orchestration platform.
All right. So the next question that we have from our audience is, what kind of use cases are mostly used across your customer base, and what kind of efficiency are you seeing?
Yeah. So these are some of the out-of-the-box use cases that we have, and this list is primarily expanding a lot, right? Based on customer use cases, customer evolving their own use cases. So we see anywhere between say 10 to 15%, depending on the ticket volume. This can also increase depending on. While assessing the need for orchestration, we also do a lot of analysis of your existing data. So based on which we can primarily work out very interesting ROI. So based on what are the automation use cases, how many incidents you get, right? We analyze the data, how many service requests. So what kind of events are occurring. So based on all these analytical data, so we identify the top 10 or top 5 use cases you want to automate. And we identify based on our strong points and these available use case list, we provide that particular response.
All right. The next question that we have from our audience is, how does this impact the overall user experience?
Time. So generally, when these tasks are primarily done by a human analyst, right? If you look at the examples that we took, shared folder access and VMware access that we created, right? So this requires less skill set, right? So it requires certain level of access, but the skill set required to create a VM is very, very less, right? Or probably, as I showed you, right, you just have to go to the respective folder, right-click it, and with appropriate access, you will be able, for such kind of monotonous and repetitive tasks, right? You can have, you need not have a skillful resource doing this particular work, right? So that's where it is primarily is our one of the key advantage, where monotonous, repetitive tasks and primarily auto remediation, right? Which includes any event scenarios that we spoke about, right, from coming from monitoring tools.
All right. Very valid points stated by Mr. Rishi. So before we conclude our session, I request our team to please release the last poll survey. So the question for the audience is, are you looking for any other following solutions in the next 6 to 12 months? And your options are IT service management, enterprise service management, IT asset management, all of the above, and none of the above. I request audience to quickly share their answers. Thank you, audience, for answering the poll survey. With that, we come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you, speakers, once again for taking out time and being with us today. I hope you enjoyed this event as much as we enjoyed putting it all together. Before we wrap up, Team Economic Times wishes all our audiences safety and the best of health. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you all.